In the heart of Brookstone, a quaint town where the sun plays hide-and-seek behind fluffy clouds, 67-year-old Harold Thompson roams his tree-lined street, clutching his well-worn newspaper. The streets are silent, save for the occasional chirp of a bird or a rustling leaf, as neighbors wave from their porches, whispering sweet rituals of a simpler time. Harold's well-kept yard, brimming with marigolds and daisies, reveals his longtime battle against dirt, his notion of cleanliness tethered tightly to daily showers, a belief he earned from years of tradition. But despite the serenity of the town, Harold senses a rumble deep within, a shadow of discomfort that brushes against his skin after every shower. At breakfast, he reluctantly runs his fingers over the dry patches on his arms, but he brushes off the feeling. Life's routines have always been his fortress. He refuses to invite uncertainties into his home. Then there's Liz, his daughter, a warm soul in her 30s, a nurse by profession, armed with new ideas and a way of seeing the world that often collides with Harold's steadfastness. When she visits, the air thickens. Her nurturing glances speak volumes about her growing concern for her father's well-being. "Dad," she gently prompts over pancakes, "have you considered that showering every day might not be the best for you anymore?" The words lands heavily, like stones against glass. Harold's pride flares up, instinctively rooted in a lifetime of hygiene routines. "What do you mean? I've always showered daily. Isn't that how one stays healthy?" Liz's voice softens. "Things change, Dad. Sometimes less is more." He scoffs, feeling a grudge against the twisting pain of self-doubt. In that moment, a silent confrontation begins, echoing deeper issues of age, health, and long-held beliefs, ready to collide in the most unexpected of ways. As sunlight filtered through the worn curtains of Harold's cozy living room, the faint scent of wood polish mingled with the crisp morning air. Brookstone was waking up, the gentle sounds of chirping birds and the rustle of leaves creating a serene backdrop. Harold sat at his quaint oak table, sipping his usual morning tea, his fingers tracing the edges of the newspaper. The headlines offered a monotonous routine of local events. Nothing seemed to change in this slow-paced town, where everyone prided themselves on their nostalgia-laden traditions. But today felt different. As he turned the pages, Harold couldn't shake the feeling of discomfort lingering beneath his skin. A dryness he had brushed off for weeks began to escalate into annoyance. He glanced down at his hands. They were nearly as parched as autumn leaves. Justifying the sensation as a mere side effect of aging, he mentally scolded himself for allowing such trivial discomfort to stain his otherwise tidy morning. A knock on the door jolted his thoughts. It was Liz, her vibrant energy bringing vibrant life into the room. "Dad!" she called out, her voice brimming with affection, though tinged with concern over the usual rituals she had begun to question. "I was just reading up on ways to stay healthy for people our age," Liz said, casually dropping her bag on the couch and gliding over to inspect the collection of half-read books on his shelf. Noticing the worn compilations on hygiene and health, she paused, her brow furrowing. "You know, there's been some discussion at the hospital about how daily showers could actually cause more harm than good for seniors." Her words hung heavily in the air, a subtle trigger of tension igniting within Harold. "Nonsense," he scoffed, the usual bravado flooding back like an old friend. "Anyone who doesn't shower daily doesn't care about themselves." Liz took a deep breath, meeting his gaze with care. "But Dad, I worry you might not realize the effects of dryness, or the risk of falls. Just hear me out." The mention of his health dulled Harold's defiance, revealing an uncomfortable truth he had stubbornly ignored. As the conversation deepened, so did Harold's frustration, the pride he held in his old ways clouding the possibility of change. Unbeknownst to him, this dialogue was merely the first ripple in a tide of transformation that awaited both father and daughter in the journey ahead. The air between Harold and Liz soured, thick with an unspoken tension that bubbled up during their conversations. She had visited him that morning, intent on sharing vital information, but to Harold it felt like an attack on everything he believed. The shrill ring of the telephone had pulled him from his solitary contemplation, and now, sitting at the kitchen table, the sunlight spilling through the window highlighting the weariness etched on his face, he found himself stewing in indignation. "Why can't you just listen to me, Dad?" Liz's voice was steady, though a tinge of exasperation slipped through. "I'm trying to help you. Daily showers might not be what's best for you anymore. You've got dry skin, a cough, and I'm not some frail old man who needs his daughter to tell him how to stay clean, Liz." Harold interjected, his voice rising as he leaned across the table, an old reflex rumbling against the newfound discomfort. Just because I'm getting older doesn't mean I should throw away the things that kept me healthy all my life. That's not what I'm saying, she replied, her frustration boiling over. Cleanliness shouldn't come at the cost of your health. It's about adapting, not giving in. Her eyes searched his, filled with the worry a daughter bore for her father. Adapting? Harold's laughter was bitter, the humor lost to the weight of tradition. So you want me to abandon decades of routine and do what? Feel less clean? What's next? Leaving my teeth unbrushed to accommodate my new normal? He couldn't hide the underlying fear, the foreboding shadow creeping over his thoughts. As the argument escalated, the door to his cherished beliefs cracked open. Harold's pride saw it as a threat, a challenge to his identity. He watched Liz pace the floor, with soft strands of hair bouncing as she enumerated facts he'd never cared to consider. The other seniors at the community center were beginning to chuckle about less frequent showers and acceptable moisture levels like it was some new fad. Harold felt the shame wash over him. He was being left behind, and that prospect frightened him. Dad, Liz said softly, the pleading in her tone breaking through his defiance. This isn't about giving up. It's about living better. I want you to feel good. Harold slumped back in his chair, staring at the cold ceramic tiles of the kitchen floor. The weight of her words, punctuated by the silence that followed, wounded him deeply. The very idea of being less clean gnawed at him, but he was beginning to see that perhaps, just perhaps, this talking point wasn't merely about dirt. It was about his very essence. Did he really want to hold on to something so tightly that it could be detrimental to him? What do you suppose I'd do then? He finally uttered, his voice quieter, almost begging for a sorceress's certainty. Liz hesitated, relief flooding her features. Why don't we talk to Dr. Thompson? You could get a second opinion, hear the facts from a professional. Another part of Harold wanted to refuse, to throw the barriers back up around his faded beliefs. Yet as he sat in his kitchen, surrounded by memories of brisk mornings and fresh starts, another seed of doubt sprouted. The looming fear of change whispered through him. And what if, just what if, he was simply burying himself under an avalanche of self-inflicted isolation? It was no longer simply a matter of showers, it was what it meant to grow older. Erosion of the old self often started with the smallest decisions. The tension continued to mount as Harold sat in Dr. Thompson's office, the sterile smell of antiseptic hanging in the air, mingling with the troubling thoughts racing through his mind. The doctor, a sturdy man with deep lines etched into his face from years of service, flipped through a colorful pamphlet as he spoke, illuminating the consequences of Harold's daily shower traditions. Harold, Dr. Thompson began with a tone that was both gentle and firm, we need to rethink how you approach hygiene. It isn't just about cleanliness, it's about your skin's health and overall well-being. Overbathing can strip away essential oils and cause the very dryness that's been bothering you. Harold felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He'd grown up in a world where a daily shower was synonymous with respectability, a badge of honor. But I've always showered every day, he replied, irritation creeping into his voice. Why should that change now? Dr. Thompson leaned in, his tone earnest. Harold, it's not about what you've always done, it's about what you need now. Your body is different. We all change as we age. This isn't a matter of pride, it's about adapting to your current health needs. As frustration bubbled within him, images of slippery tiling and fogged glass confronted Harold's mind. The painful memory of his slip in the bathroom flashed back, water pooling beneath him like the dread that now surged in his chest. He swallowed hard, feeling the flush of embarrassment rise to his cheeks. So what do you suggest I do? He asked, resignation creeping into his voice. Consider reducing your showers to every other day, Dr. Thompson advised. Focus on dry skin treatments and always moisturize after any shower. Tailored hygiene is essential. It keeps you active and minimizes risks. The doctor's words hung in the air like a shadow. Harold felt small, as if the foundation of his very identity was being dismantled. I don't know, Doc. It feels like giving in, like admitting that I'm, well, old, he said, his voice tremulous. Just then, the door creaked open, and his daughter Liz walked in with a sun-kissed smile, unaware of the turmoil causing his heart to race. Dad, you won't believe the conversations happening at the hospital about hygiene for seniors. More folks are starting to realize. He cut her off, feeling cornered. I was just hearing about that from Dr. Thompson, he barked, anger flaring. You both are telling me I'm doing it wrong my whole life. Is this what it means to grow old? To change everything? Liz took a step closer, concern etching her features. Dad, it's not wrong to adapt, to learn. It's about taking care of you. We love you and want to help. Harold's mind raced. What if embracing this change meant letting go of everything he'd known? The specter of societal judgment loomed larger. He could almost hear whispers from neighbors about being delicate or lost. As the room's temperature surged with tension, a thought pierced through. The monster lurking within him was not just the hygiene myth, but the fear of losing his identity in a world that was starting to shift beneath his feet. "Do you really think changing my shower routine will put me in better health?" he asked, suddenly desperate for answers. But Liz simply looked at him, her eyes full of understanding, and the weight of the question pressed hard against the walls of his mind. Would he have the courage to confront this monster? Or would he remain cocooned in the safety of his old ways, risking not just his health, but his ability to adapt? The uncertainty lay thick in the air, leaving Harold suspended in indecision, with the future of his well-being hanging delicately in the balance. Harold sat on the weathered recliner, the shadows of his living room flickering as the television broadcast droned on about public health tips. But the words of the speaker faded into the background, consumed by descending thoughts of shame and doubt. His skin still clung to that raw memory of embarrassment. Slipping in the bathroom, the cold tiles mocking his pride as he struggled to regain his footing. Life as he knew it now felt unsteady, like the very ground he stood on had shifted. With a deep, unsteady breath, he turned to Liz. She was perched on the arm of the couch, her bright eyes studying him, concern etched across her face. It stung to see her worry. He was her father, after all, the stalwart of family strength, now teetering on the edge of vulnerability. "Dad," she began, her voice soft yet unwavering, "you have to realize that it's not about giving in to age. It's about adapting and prioritizing your health." "Adapting," he snapped, his voice tinged with indignation. "So now I'm supposed to accept that I'm old and helpless?" Tension hung heavy between them, thick as the dust motes swirling in the dying autumn light. Liz took a steadying breath. Her tone shifted to one of empathy. "It's not helplessness, Dad. It's wisdom, understanding that health matters more than tradition." Her words struck him, igniting an internal battle. One moment he thought of the pride wrapped in his daily rituals, the pride that felt like his last bastion against the aging process. The next, he recalled the bruises and discomfort he'd endured. Was tradition really worth pain? "You think I'm being foolish, don't you?" he whispered, eyes glued to the floor. "No, not foolish," Liz replied, her hand reaching out, fingers brushing over his as an olive branch. "I just want you to see that caring for yourself is more important than fitting into a mold that no longer suits you." For the first time, Harold saw not just the monster of societal norms, but the clarity of his own truth. The public health broadcast loomed in his mind. The idea that personal hygiene isn't a one-size-fits-all approach, but a fluid part of life's journey. A revelation sparked within him, merging with the memory of his slip. This wasn't just about changing habits. This was an urgent call to self-advocacy. He finally understood that by clinging blindly to the past, he was rejecting not just the wisdom of doctors like Dr. Thompson, but also the love and concern of his own daughter. He looked into Liz's eyes, a wellspring of understanding, vulnerability, and trust. I think I've been stubborn," he admitted, his voice cracking. "Maybe it's time I learned to listen, to you, to my body." It felt monumental, a tipping point toward acceptance. "I'm proud of you, Dad," Liz replied, her voice filled with warmth. The heaviness began to lift from Harold's chest, making way for something new, hope. With a newfound determination, Harold stood, his resolve firm. "Let's talk to Dr. Thompson together," he asserted, a hint of a smile breaking across his face. "I want to figure this out. My way." It was here, at this moment, that he felt the chains of archaic expectations slowly shattering, revealing a pathway that led to a healthier, more balanced version of himself, rooted not in tradition but in thoughtful care. The turning point was clear. Change was not only possible, it was essential, and he was ready to forge ahead. As weeks passed, Harold transformed not just in routine but in spirit. His new approach to hygiene, embracing infrequent showers, yielded remarkable changes. No longer burdened by dry, irritated skin, he felt energetic, sprightly on his feet, a stark contrast to his previous sluggishness. Each day ended with a sense of renewal, a reward for his courageous shift away from tradition. The impact didn't stop with him. His heartfelt discussions with fellow seniors at the community center opened the floodgates to deeper conversations about self-care. Harold's vulnerability sparked empathy within the group, Others began sharing their own struggles against similarly outdated norms. They rallied together, creating a support network that emphasized self-advocacy, an inspirational movement in Brookstone. In these exchanges, Harold found a profound lesson. Embracing change didn't signify defeat. It marked a courageous acknowledgement of life's evolution. He championed their shared journey, feeling proud to rewrite the guidelines surrounding aging, health, and hygiene. By confronting the monster of misinformation, not only did Harold reshape his identity, but he also cultivated a community empowered to prioritize well-being over conventions. In the comfort of understanding and acceptance, they all discovered that true cleanliness begins with respect for oneself and one's body, heralding the victory of personal growth.